Look, there's no, we can't be hiding. Kuba Mr. Ramaphosa is a businessman.
Yeah.
For him, his bottom line is profit. You can't take him and make him a president of a country whereby his bottom line must be
Service
delivery and
Yeah.
improving the quality of the
Yes.
people.
Yeah.
So there are aspects of my life that I will never reveal, that are between myself, my family,
and we became
and my
who we
God.
are because of that past and that history. We became strong women because we know who we are.
Fundis and all of that. I mean, I heard the audible voice of God.
It wasn't a
On the
decision.
31st.
On the decision, it was a calling.
That one, yeah.
Like Christ himself.
What was that about?
I don't even
So
know. I
you
don't
can't
know.
just trust the person who was able to initiate a relationship with your husband knowingly and trust them with your life, with your kid.
A fancy restaurant in a beautiful place in South Africa, and he left you with
Love them.
7,000
Foods, babe. He's not circumcised.
I meant our sex.
Our sex. Meaning I already
Do a
do it.
lifestyle.
Yes.
Will it marry what you say you're doing? Which
African transformation is a topic that has been, I think, for many decades, even preceding the apartheid regime, that obviously inflicted a lot of hurts in people's lives. But African transformation even comes from a fact that as Africans, many of us, especially as Black native Africans, many of us have been marginalized. Many of us have had things taken from us. Many of us have had our mineral resources taken. And we're at a time where we are, I'd say, woke. We are aware that kufanele lezinto zibuye. We need to get things back, and we need to get the African person, the African child out of poverty and make them to be able to participate in the economy, and not just participate only, also be leaders in different spheres of the economy. So today I'm with the leader of the African Transformation Movement. He's the president, the leader. He'll correct me and tell me which one it is. His name is Vuyo Zungula. He's also a member of parliament, which means he is going to be held accountable maybe by us today for the decisions and the things that he says in parliament, as a person who we have sent to parliament to do things for us and express our feelings towards certain issues. Bhuti, siyabonga kakhulu.
Siyabonga kakhulu, and thank you for inviting us.
Sure. Just what is the African Transformation Movement for the person who's hearing about it for the first time? Because it obviously doesn't fall in the so-called big four parties in the country.
Yeah, no, ATM to a lot of people is a political party that was formed in 2018, largely by people who were in the traditional spaces, which is Amakosi, Amasonto, and community leaders, with the sole objective of just providing solutions to the problems we face in the country.
Yeah.
Our premise, we founded on transformation because we believe we need to transform things so that our country gets to work better for its citizens.
Sure.
So that is what African transformation is in a nutshell.
I hear you, but what about the people who say, and there's a huge perception that you're fully aware of, that you were founded on the back of people being angry that the Zuma faction didn't win the particular ANC conference at the time. You're a man whom I've observed over the past 5 years that the party has been in existence. So good. No, man, this man has a lot of times said things that make sense, said things and made decisions in parliament that are for the betterment of the country. How does this then, is the same person as City, he's bitter, he's coming from a party of bitterness, people who are just trying to rebel the ANC?
Look, what people need to understand about our country is that politics is very volatile in our country.
Okay.
And they do not want... you can't be clean in politics. There must be something that is used to discredit you. Now, come ATM in 2018, led by a person who's never been in politics. Therefore, he does not have a corruption scandal anywhere.
Sure.
Therefore, you need to taint his name, and the best way to taint his name is to create a rumor. A rumor for over 5 years has never been proven. There's not even single evidence that a person can say, here's a picture of you, for example, with Mr. Mahashule or Mr. Zuma, or we see an email, or we see in your bank account, there's something that came from these particular people. It's always There's a perception that is there. And we want to remind people, and that's why we've been so patient, because it's not by people's doing that that perception is there. Rather, it is a system whereby if you're coming as a political party, not funded by the system that sustains itself through political parties, but you're being funded by the church members, meaning you are going to be an independent voice. You are not going to just continue saying the things that are said by other people. Secondly, you are not, you don't have scandals, meaning there's someone who's going to, open a file and say, remember
because
this,
when now unje.
yeah. So there's always, so that is how people operate in our country. But we do want to state, we've got no association with all of the people from the ANC. Our formation was largely because of the despondency, particularly of the African churches, who said the ANC only comes to them when they want elections.
Okay.
After the elections, they'll disappear. The ANC had a commission of inquiry to investigate which of their leaders were involved in the formation of other parties, including the ATM.
Yeah.
And that report that was done by the former speaker, Dr. Fringe Jinwala, found that there's no one from the ANC that is involved in the formation and the running and the operation of the ATM. But for us, we'll always, clarify this question time and time again. We're not going to be upset because we know, but it's not by people's doing. It's some influence that is there with a particular purpose of trying to discredit us.
Perhaps it's not a bad thing for this question to keep on coming up, because it means you're making an impact.
Yeah, definitely.
People don't chase after a car that's not moving.
Exactly. Because you find that, I see a lot of people on Twitter who keep roasting me.
Okay.
And, some of my friends are like, how do you deal with this hate? I'm like, if we're not making an impact, they would not even say anything about us. The fact that we are in their mouths, it means there's something we're doing right. So, in fact, for us, all of the hate is like motivation to say we're doing the right things, we're saying the right things. We must just keep on, in the path that we've started, because clearly it's making an impact.
There's a perception that if you don't vote for one of the big parties, you are wasting your vote. And the big parties love driving that narrative.
Yeah.
Uguti, if you are voting for somebody who's smaller, then you're really wasting your vote. How do you respond to that?
If people can look at the ATM since 2019 up until now, they can see Koba, that is the worst lie ever.
Yeah.
Because if you look at what ATM has been advocating for, or actually advocated in these 4 years in Parliament, you see that it is not about the quantity of seats. Yes, you need that quantity of seats in terms of taking decision as a majority. But when you have substance as a party in Parliament or as a member, then your substance will be understood or will be heard or will make impact. Look at, for example, the issue of immigration. Up until ATM got to Parliament, that issue was not thoroughly discussed in Parliament. It is ATM that pushed the issue to an extent that Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi and all of the other ministers
has taken decisions
because of the influence of ATM. I remember that even the president instituted interministerial committee to look at the issue, and that is from an influence of just 2 members of Parliament coming from the ATM. Look at the question of Phala Phala. Yeah, but other parties from your main opposition or official opposition, they were led by ATM in the process. It was ATM that was leading the charge for accountability, to say it can't be that there are a set of laws for you and another set of laws for whoever occupies political power. So when political parties speak like that, it means they're not speaking about what they offer. Rather, they're trying to dissuade people from voting for other so-called smaller parties. But the truth is, when the election season comes, there's no big party or small party. It's only after parties have been elected and you get to see this one has got 50, this one has got 10%, then you can see, or you can say which one is a bigger party or small party. So for us as the ATM, the fact that the so-called big parties speak like that, it is because they feel the impact that is made by the so-called small parties.
So you basically saying quality over quantity sometimes goes a long way.
Definitely. This past few years is an expression of that if you've got substance and at the same time you're solution-orientated and you're principled, because you find that a lot of parties, they're not principled in the sense that it matters who is in the wrong before they can speak out. if something, they're not principled to say if something is wrong, wrong, regardless whether it is President Ramaphosa or President Zuma or Advocate Mkhwebane or Advocate Madonsela. If something is wrong, wrong.
Yeah.
Rather, bona, they're like, okay, this is how we're going to approach it. This person is our person, is bidding for our interest, therefore we're going to keep quiet because ngumntu wethu. You understand? So for us, quality over quantity, and most importantly, substance. And then make sure that you articulate izinto ezifunwa ngabantu, because as members of parliament, that's what we are supposed to be doing. It is to express the wishes of the people.
Yeah. You spoke of the system earlier, Oguti. The reason some of these big parties are scared to delve into certain topics, it's because the system, which consists of business people and funders, say, okay, we can't speak about this, or let's speak about this, or we can't be too loud about this. And you're saying that ATM obviously exists outside of the system, because you're saying it's all about traditional churches, African churches. Those are the people who are behind you and who are supporting you. That's where you saw the gap. So how then do you have a person who, at the time when you were founded, like Mzwanele Manyi, who was big in the system, then become such a notorious member of your organization? How did you allow that, or what was your vision behind allowing him to be part of the organization?
Look, the party was formed in 2018. 2018, I think from July up until November, went across the country launching the party. January 2019, Mr. Manyi joined the party.
Okay.
And when he joined the party, obviously the leadership said there are certain skills that we can utilize and make sure that the party does grow. And that is what formed him being part of the leadership. However, to the minds of a lot of people, like we said, sometimes to a lot of people, politics is about personalities. It's really about the substance and what people have to offer. That is why a lot of people are saying, but Mr. Manyi is the leader. You know, they were like, who's this Vuyo? We've never seen him in any political party. He's a no one, he's a novice, and all of those things. But for us, we knew that for us, it's not about personalities, because the politics of personalities is the one that is dragging South Africa to the ground.
I hear you.
Because people are loyal to certain personalities instead of being loyal to their interest and the future of their own children.
Yeah.
That is why even us as a party, the party is not centered around me as an individual. Unlike other parties whereby you can see, but this party is molded in the character of its leader, which is so and so.
Yeah.
So for us, we have a principle of, if a person provides a skill that we can utilize, that can better the country and grow the organization, we're going to utilize that skill.
That's fair. So you were utilizing him because his skills were aligned with what you were trying to do. But then how do you then go to him when he now becomes the spokesperson for the Jacob Zuma Foundation? Once again, something that is marred by controversy. Don't you go to him and say, hey, no, how did you feel about such decisions that he made, even outside of the party?
Look, the reality is that, firstly, like we stated, we are funded by our church members and ordinary members. We don't have big funders.
Yeah.
Even if you look at that IEC, funding that funding report that they release every quarter, you really find ATM there. So most of our members, for example, we've got our deputy chairperson. He works for a mine, we've got other members. Our deputy secretary is also working in consultancy for some company as well. So we do not have the resources to take care of our leaders.
Sure.
Therefore, if a person comes to us and says, I've got this opportunity that will be able to assist me because I've got gaps in my personal space financially. So we do not have the right to say you can't do it. Don't take it, especially if we're not going to fill that particular gap.
Yeah.
So for us, it's a matter of when a person wants, for example, it would have been unfair as well to say the deputy chairperson can work for a mine. The very same mining sector one transformed. One of our leaders can work in a consulting company. The very same consulting companies with view Ogoba, they are milking the government because the municipalities spend a lot of money in terms of consultancy. But when Mr. Mzwanele Manyi wants a job somewhere else, we say no, don't take it. So it would have been unfair on us and would have caused friction in terms of our leadership. So it is friction that we decided we do not want to go there.
Do you believe then that there is an advantage to not being heavily funded because you guys have the privilege of having professionals who are in different spheres being able to be on the ground in that professional setup and still have a political voice.
Definitely. You know, one of the things I like about being independent is that when you debate there's no one who's going to call you after and say, what you've just said does not represent our interests, therefore stop saying these things, you know. I remember I was debating once, there's a subject that we proposed in a debate. It was the issue of the informal economy being used, firstly, that it must be dominated by South Africans, and it must be used to transform the economy. So we debated there. Almost all of the parties were actually against my the proposal that I had. Now, after the debate, one guy from the ruling party comes to me and, you know, he shakes me my hand and says, "Oh, I spoke well." I ask him, "But inside you were howling and heckling me. And when you were speaking, you were actually against me." And the guy said, "Hey, my brother, please understand, but this is politics.
Yeah.
We need to say what the party bosses want. And the party bosses say whatever their funders want." So for me, I found that the reason why there'll never be truth and principle in our electoral system, it is because the issue of funding is not explored enough. Whether does the funding of political parties actually lead to public representative better representing the interests of the people, or it makes them rather to better represent the interests of whoever that is funding them. So in our strong belief as the ATM, we believe if you are funded by the very same banks, for example, look at people like Tito Mboweni. He's a Minister of Finance. He speaks about a state bank before he was appointed. But when he is a Minister of Finance, he says nothing, does nothing. Now, if you look at his register of interest, you find that they own a lot of shares in banks. Now, there's no way you can bite the hand that feeds you.
Yeah.
There's no way you can advocate for a state bank. At the same time, you've got so much interest. And you know how these companies operate. They will not, what they will do, they'll just give you shares. Now, because you've got shareholding, you know that it is in your interest that
this company does well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that is what, for example, in our view, is actually making political people to be amaxoki. Because they have to speak about, when they speak to people, they say the right things because they know the issues of the people. But when they're in parliament, they need to take decisions. They take decisions in accordance to the interests of their funders.
What I'm getting from you is that through shareholding and such interests, maybe people being on the board of directors of big international or multinational companies, these multinationals have captured the government unofficially.
Yeah, it's capture. I want to make an example. There's the issue of labor brokers. The unions were actually fighting against labor brokers. In my previous work, there's a lady who was a cleaner. She used to come 2 times a week. One day she comes to my office and she's crying. She's asking for a bus fare, and I give it to her. And then she's like, "I know you are going to think I am drinking my money, but here's my pay slip." She was getting paid 170 rands per fortnight. Now, I could not understand, because how can a person who's doing so much work actually be paid so little? Only to find that majority of the money goes to the labor broker.
Yeah.
The labor broker take their profits, and whatever they want, they give peanuts to the worker. Now, some of the union leaders from COSATU and them, they're actually owning labor brokering companies. They've got shareholding there. So that is what is wrong in our system. Look, for example, Tito Mboweni. He's a Minister of Finance. During his tenure as a Minister of Finance, Old Mutual disinvests from South Africa, meaning it moves away from the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. It is now registered, I think, in the London Stock Exchange. And that happens during his time. Hardly 6 months after he stops being a Minister of Finance, he's appointed to be the chairperson of the board of the very same Old Mutual that disinvested during his time. So you can see ukuba politics, unfortunately, to a lot of people is a space whereby abantu can just enrich themselves. Others through corruption, others through systematically being appointed in terms of being board members, or abanye, they will just have shareholding, but ultimately it's about their interest. It's rare to find a person who is, when you look at their interest, maybe what you need to do sometimes is maybe have a talk whereby you're just going through the members' interest to see, this member of parliament has got so many shares up and up and up, has got so many properties. How can a person who is earning so much have so much assets, cars and houses? And how can you are able to see that these people that have so much assets and have so much shares in these companies, check how vocal they are in terms of the issues, and look at these members of parliament who are just having ibhayisekile and maybe they do not declare izinto ezininzi. Check how vocal they are. You get to see Kuba, the ones who are not captured by the system, as you say, are more vocal.
But Vuyo, I hear you speak about financial interests being the biggest issue that's pulling the country backwards instead of pushing it forward. Then what is the ideal funding model for political parties in your opinion?
If political parties were to be funded by their members, then it would, assist us in terms of, that this member has got an interest because he's a community member. He wants his party to grow. Immediately, you've got big corporates that are giving you 20 million. Thomas Sankara said, whoever funds you controls you.
Yeah.
Now, if you were to look at, for example, how the likes of your DA, all of these white-aligned political parties, check whoever that is funding them and check when they speak, whose interests are they really representing. So, but if they are going to go campaign, in the township, in the villages, people don't understand the link between funding and a party representing certain interests. So for us, what is ideal is parties must be funded by their members, and then the parliament funding and the IEC funding used to supplement whoever or whatever that the party is able to raise legitimately from its members. And want to actually applaud this system whereby the funders are actually declared, disclosed, so that people can get to see, Kuba, as I'm voting for this party, I'm also voting for the interests of the people that is bankrolling this particular party.
I hear you. So if you know that, for example, if you're voting for Party X, it's funded by a Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
And how do you feel about how Coca-Cola runs their business? It means you're giving them a vote.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because Coca-Cola will have a significant influence in terms of what that party does. Because most of the time as a voter, your voice is only when you are making your marks during the elections. Whereas a funder, look, for example, how often do political parties, leaders, actually engage the communities. You find that once in a while, they are going to engage communities. And behind the doors, you find that every month, there's no month that passes between them as a party and whoever that is funding them. Therefore, this one that has got the money is influencing, your conduct is influencing whatever that you say is a political leader. So for us, it's something that we need to explore. And the other issue that has not been thoroughly explored is a lot of other parties, their funders are not declared because it is via cash. And that is why you find, other people, when it comes to the issue of, for example, drugs, they are not going to be as vocal about dealing with the issue of drugs that is killing our people. Because by the majority of the people that are funding them are actually drug lords or people that
want protection.
Want protection, because, if you watch these movies and you see how drug lords, business people, all of these sectors are actually using politicians for their interests.
Sure.
We can't be naive to think it does not happen in our country. The fact that we don't have investigative journalists that will actually expose Tokoba, these particular drug lords are influencing this particular party. That is why this party will defend drug lords, So it's something that we need to have a look at. Maybe in the nearest future, we find a way to actually expose such parties who profit from the suffering of our people.
And that's very interesting that you speak of the private sector, people who do bad, like drug lords, being interlinked with politicians and using them for their front. There's Al Jazeera released a documentary recently, the Gold Mafia. It was a 4-part series, and a lot of our South African politicians appeared on the documentary. Do you think our system has the capacity to prosecute such people? Because those investigative journalists, all it takes is for a case number to be opened and go to Al Jazeera and say, please, can you hand over the evidence? Because clearly you've done the work to provide the evidence.
Yeah, it goes back to political will. You know, the root of our problems in our country, they stem from lack of political will. Because if you are going to have a political party or political leaders that are implicated in the smuggling of gold, therefore what they are going to do is that they are going to protect each other from prosecution.
Yeah.
Because, you know, kuzobanjwa this person today, the next person is another person within your circle, and before you know it, it's going to be yourself. Therefore, that is why many most of these cases, they don't go anywhere. I'm sure you watch this show Usuzoktola.
Yes.
You find that X there is actually being threatened, and you find that also the cases relating to drug dealing, they don't go far.
Yeah.
Only because there's syndicates, and these syndicates have got the protection of political leaders. Similarly with the issue of illegal mining, whilst we need to root out illegal miners because they're terrorizing our communities, but there's no way to sustainably do so if you don't deal with the syndicates.
Sure.
Because there's no way a young boy as young as 14 coming from Mozambique will go underground, illegally mine, take that gold and sell it to someone. You know, there's a system, and that system includes mining houses. It means it includes government officials, includes people in the law enforcement space. It also includes politicians. Therefore, the biggest problem that we face is that politicians are at the core of the destruction of our country. That is why you'll never see political will. For example, look at a shutdown that was recent in March.
Yeah.
We saw so many police that were in the streets. The police visibility was high.
Yeah.
But we know there's high, hotspots for drug dealing, for hijacked buildings.
Yeah.
But why have we not seen
The same police.
the same police, the same effort when it was there during the shutdown being used to actually deal with the illegal miners, the drug dealers, and all of those people that are doing harm to our citizens? It is because it is not in the interest of the politician that has been captured and the politician that benefits from all of these crimes.
Do you think this thing of politicians being captured goes as deep as industries we never even thought that politicians are involved? I'll make an example. It's almost 10 years and the country still doesn't know who murdered Senzo Meyiwa. That's somebody who's in sports. There's musicians involved who are now, where people have said a lot of things about them. Do you think there's definitely political interference even in such cases?
Definitely. Because look at how highly politicized this Senzo Meyiwa case. They remove one of the advocates for their even this judge, Baumela, apparently now is going to be removed. So man, there's so much that is happening there. And it would give an impression, Ukoba, this case has to take a particular direction. You'll recall that even the people that were allegedly the criminals, one of them said, the crime that I was said I'm arrested for, it is a certain crime. It has got nothing to do with the killing of Senzo Meyiwa.
Yeah.
So which clearly shows, because, a criminal network has got no limits. So we can't be saying, we can't be thinking, Ukoba, the criminal networks that we have in our politics, they go towards, for example, the issue of illegal mining or gold smuggling, etc. It will include such issues. Similarly, the issue of the killing of AKA. You find that, we're going to struggle to get
any answers.
Yeah. Whereas there are cameras there, and you should be having
and all angles.
Yes, and you should be having an intelligence that is going to give confidence. Actually, we've got a functioning police system in our country whereby a person that commits a crime will be arrested. But I want to take you back to say the root causes of our problems, it is political will. Political will that is influenced by people that have been captured, people that no longer serve or act in the best interest of the people. Rather, they act in their own best interest and the interest of whoever that is sustaining their lives and their livelihoods.
Likewise, with the Thabo Bester case, we actually, at this point, we don't know what's going on.
Imagine, because if you check how systematic those crimes were.
Yeah.
I remember when that thing blew up, a lot of people were actually saying he's going to be killed.
Yeah.
Or they are going to try to find a way.
Katie McKenzie said that too.
He must not be allowed to testify.
Yeah.
Because if he's allowed to testify, and is able to speak there and tell the truth, to say, this is how I actually got out, is going to implicate a lot of powerful people. You know, we know in our country, but you are powerful, you are almost immune to prosecution.
Invincible.
Yeah, look
you're
at, for
immune.
example, the issue of Phala Phala.
Yeah.
You've got robbers that come to the president's private farm, they steal money from him. And look how, and the president has actually confirmed that, yeah, I had money there and it was stolen. But the question would be, has those people, those criminals, ever been arrested? And even now, there's no one that is following up to say if there's indeed justice, because immediately those guys get to be arrested. One of the questions that are going to emanate, how much did you steal?
Yes.
And the president will find it very difficult to explain, Ukoba, these guys say they stole a certain amount of money, whereas on his papers, he said he only had so much money. So all of this is rooted in the criminal system or the mafia state that South Africa has become. Whilst it might not